Before we get into this episode, I want to thank our sponsors. We just keep adding to the list, and I'm so honored and humbled by that. I appreciate people's support. I want to start off with our local folks here in the Houston area, Conroe, Texas. The name of the company is Summer Moon Coffee, and friends of our family has started this coffee shop, and I want to thank Wyatt and his team for taking care of the community and for serving and just providing great product, a great atmosphere. Summer Moon Coffee in Conroe. Also, a good friend of mine, veteran, U.S. Army veteran and man of faith, Randy LeVere in Indiana, who started a company called Armored Nation Coffee, and he has provided us with opportunities for savings. If you type in last in line, when you go to his website, armoredcoffee.com, you'll get a 25% discount on the greatest coffee to date that I've seen and tasted from the great state of Indiana. Let's put it that way. It's very good. Very good, and he's a great guy, and the mission he has is to take the gospel to the marketplace. So thank you, Armored Nation Coffee. Also, Do Work That Matters is a fairly new sponsor, a young man who is out showing appreciation with an apparel line that he's created for first responders, people in the community that serve, give back, and do work that matters. He's created a clothing line. He's been gracious with giving us some of his merchandise, and it's great stuff. Love the logo. So thank you to Do Work That Matters. Most recently, we've added the Cowboy Revolution apparel company, and I came across him on Instagram and just reached out, and we connected, and he was nice enough to send us some things, and love the logo, love his brand, and Cowboy Revolution Apparel is our newest sponsor. So I say go check them out on Instagram and go to their website and cowboyrevolutionapparel.com and get some of their stuff. It's awesome. Worthy mission. And last but not least, I want to thank our newest sponsor, Lead Like Lions, and Kevin Fulton. And I want to just thank him for reaching out and supporting Last in Line podcast with a t-shirt. They've got a really cool logo, a cool Instagram page. They've got a website that says they Lead Like Lions is a Christian lifestyle brand to help men become stronger physically, mentally, and most important, spiritually, to lead their families as God has created them to do. So I want to thank Lead Like Lions for their support of this podcast. So as we get into this, I want to introduce our guest. Tami Matheny is a performance coach. She's the owner of Refuse to Lose Coaching, and she's an author. She's a speaker. She's a member of the Jon Gordon coaching team. If y'all know who that is, very popular. Jon Gordon, of course, Power of Positive Leadership, those things. She's a member of that team, and she assists people basically in all walks of life just to kind of come to terms with some of their issues around confidence, focus, motivation, mental toughness, those things. She was a college athlete, played basketball and tennis, and then received a degree in psychology, then went on to receive a master's degree at the University of North Carolina. She became a women's tennis coach at the University of South Carolina upstate, where she continued to pour into the next generation of athletes and just really identifying ways to keep them on the cutting edge of confidence, focus, and motivation. And she's run a handful of marathons. She's run a 40 miler. So she's an avid runner, just a very focused endurance athlete. And then she's also written a few books. She's written one called This Is Good, A Journey of Overcoming Adversity. She created a confidence journal. She also has like a little calendar that she puts out for positive thinking and thoughts and just motivation for every day of the month. Need to check her out on like LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram. But most recently, she wrote a book called Challenger Deep. And we're going to go into that a little bit today. And it's really, I'm going to let her tell the story, but it's a really unique perspective on confidence. So with that, help me welcome Tami Matheny to Last in Line. Tami Matheny, good to see you again. Welcome to Last in Line podcast.
Well, thank you for having me, John. I've been looking forward to this.
Of course. Yeah, me too, man. It's been, I guess, late 2020. We got to know each other through Chip Baker, and we got you do a virtual book tour, and so I was a part of that with right when my book came out, and very grateful for that opportunity. And then life happens, and then here we are. Fast forward, and we're 2022. We blink our eyes, and here we are a year and a half later, almost. And so, what's been going on in your world recently?
This past year, I saw a lot of, I guess, the bloom take hold of everything that didn't happen in with COVID year. And so this year I was blessed, had abundance of work, and then was able to put out my fourth book as well. So just finished working on the project with Chip with one of his books, The Impact of Influencers of Females. So been busy writing and just doing mental game coaching.
All right. Well, cool. Yeah, I mentioned all that in the intro that you're a coach, mental coach, and used to be a coach on the field, on the court. And yeah, so we're doing a series called Lead Through Your Bleed. And a lot of us have different brands, different flavors of what bleed looks like. And we're all called for leadership, but some of us don't necessarily know how to lead through those times of adversity, through those trials or tragedies or things where we have to sort of, we need to cope and heal, but we're still every day grind. We're trying to be leaders. And so I'd like to hear maybe about some of your journey coming up, because you're really on this confidence theme throughout some of your materials. And you mentioned that you haven't always had a ton of confidence, even though you were a high caliber athlete, college and high school. Take us back a little bit through some of those teen years and athletics, and maybe what was the issue with the confidence since you were a high performer?
I had that feeling inside that I'm recognizing the more I talk to our youth that a lot do, that feeling you're not good enough. And I am so grateful there wasn't social media back then, because I'm sure it would have been worse. But just high expectations. My family was a high performing family. They didn't put those expectations on me, but I felt like they did. I internalized it, like I had to get their approval through performing, producing. And I had a bad time with comparisons. I had a twin brother. My parents did a great job of trying to never compare us, but I did. I wanted to outdo him grade wise. He played sports. I wanted to be a better athlete than he was for a guy. And I did that to myself without realizing that. And so I just never felt good enough. I was only confidence based on that last test score or that last game or even that last shot. And when I would miss a shot, oh my gosh, am I not a good shooter anymore? And just all of that dialogue. Now, if you saw me on the outside, you would have thought I was a pretty confident person, but it was really a roller coaster that I dealt with in preteen, teen, even leading into college.
Yeah. Well, so sounds like a fairly good family environment and family dynamic. Sounds like it was a positive, high achieving household, but was there an incident, or was it just some sort of insecurity that we all kind of have? But was there something that triggered you in that kind of always, never measure, not always, never, that's never measuring up, never measuring up to your own standards? Was there some incident that sort of was that trigger for you?
I've looked back through the years, and if you really want to analyze and get psychoanalytical.
Well, you have a degree in psychology, so I figured we'd go right down your swim lane here. Okay.
So I've spent many hours trying to analyze it. I think there were a couple incidences growing up. My brother was very sick, again, having a twin brother, and I felt like he was half of me. Like together we made a whole. And we went on our first trip to Disney World, and he ended up getting very sick, hepatitis, had to stay in the hospital for several months. And my mom and my grandmother went down to Florida. My dad and I went back up to North Carolina. And I felt like I had been left. And I know that wasn't, I know they needed to be there, but I felt like half of me was gone. Then my mom was gone. That means she loved my brother more. All those are irrational thoughts. But I think I started thinking I had to do stuff to get seen or to make someone proud of me. And I think there were other small incidences where you look back as an adult and you think that was maybe silly. But I think we all have those that kind of shape us who we are, good or bad traits. So it's definitely been a work in progress, you could say, for me.
Going through your athletic career, we're going to talk about some of your brand of whatever a bleed was psychologically, mentally. So this confidence thing, did it affect you, or were you still always just kind of a duck on the water where no one could tell that you were ever dealing with anything?
I don't think people could really tell that because I, again, thought it was a weakness to show any kind of emotional weakness. So I did not want people knowing I was confident. And I think that was probably part of the problem because I didn't have an outlet. I didn't have someone to talk to. I didn't realize that, hey, I was normal. A lot of people have those thoughts and feelings. So I did internalize it a lot. And then my last year in college, I just started informally, there's got to be a better way than this, and started watching other top performing athletes in any sport or just confident people in general. And like, what are they doing that I'm not? Or what do they have? And through that process, I mean, it took years. I still studied people again, informally after I graduated. And I came to kind of narrow it down to 4 things that if we controlled every day, we could have a steady baseline of confidence and get off of that I call it roller coaster. Confidence when things are good or we're told we're good, and then down when we have a bad result. And that's our self-talk. And I think that's so important. All of the thoughts that we have throughout the day, our body language, how we carry ourselves and how we see ourselves, and then preparation. It's hard to be confident when you haven't put in the work. So I was able to glean those 4 things, and that just kind of started a career without even knowing it. I used it at first to help with my coaching of, men and women's collegiate tennis. And that just kind of led to a career and led to a book.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to talk about your latest book in a second, but going through was This Is Good the first book you wrote?
The Confident Athlete was the
Confident
first book.
Okay. And so Confident Athlete, and then This Is Good. Now talk about that one, because that's got the word in adversity in the subtitle. So what led to that book? And then what was some of the things you were most proud of that came out of that book?
Well, This Is Good is taken from an African folktale. And I heard it maybe 12 years ago, and it just really resonated. And the whole idea behind it is nothing's good or bad till we decide it is. And it became my motto. I wear it on my wrist. I don't know if you can see that every day.
Oh, yeah, there it is.
Yeah. And it just became my motto that, okay, this is happening. I can react negatively or just give myself a little space or time to allow something better, different to come in its place. And I think too often we're quick to respond in a negative emotion. And so hearing this African folktale, I was like, okay, how can I apply that personally, professionally, in any area? And it really started to change my life. Then I started using it. It's almost one of the first things I do if I come in and work with a team. I start off with this story and challenge them to start finding the good in everything that happens. What is good about an injury? What's good about a loss? And sometimes, if I'm honest, that's still hard for me, but very rarely do you see a championship team that didn't have that one loss that they look back at that, hey, we needed that to move on. Teams that don't end up succeeding like they want usually have those losses, and they start to question their confidence, or they blame teammates or question coaches. So it's just a shift in mindset. And that's one of the pieces that I like to add. Now, when I go and tell teams, some of them are like, oh yeah, this is a great story. Others kind of like, oh, this is cheesy, roll their eyes. Some of them are like, okay, it's cute. I don't know how to apply it. And then you get that team or individual every once in a while that grabs a hold of it and just runs with it. So I was working with Belmont University women's soccer team in Nashville, and they had about as much adversity as a team could possibly go through. I didn't even share half of it in the book just to keep some privacy. But they kept reverting back to that folktale. and they just really ran with that mission. They lost, I think the first 2 months of the season, they had not won a game. They had so many injuries, a lot of deaths, and not on the team, but, important people in their lives. And they just held on and kept themselves alive. And the season didn't end up how they wanted, but they found it ended up many ways better. And they found so much power in themselves. And I believe, in hearing some of them 2-3 years since then have told me how they're taking it in their life as a professional now, or in their personal relationships. So the book is a journey of that I had with the team, but most importantly, the lessons that I myself even learned through the whole process.
Wow. Yeah. And so I would imagine you incorporate how that moment of just, I guess, absolute bottom or darkness can galvanize people if they allow it, and they feed off of it, and they kind of unite and then move forward toward that same mission, like all teams do. I would imagine that's a common conversation you're having, as far as, hey, this is what happened. When you have this loss, yeah, you're finding good in it, but guess what? This is going to strengthen you, right? This is going to empower you down the road. And just like being in the gym, like, you can't have growth without pain. And so, I'm sure you use that all the time too, but talk to me. Like, when I knew we were going to do this interview, I'm thinking, okay, I was looking, and you're all about confidence, and this is good. And just that being your motto. And talk to the audience, because I get in this gray area sometimes too, of confidence and arrogance. Like, there's got to be a line in the sand, right? There's a line in the sand somewhere. There's a fine line. So tell us from your professional opinion. Yeah. Can you tell us kind of how you distinguish those, or is it even hard for people to distinguish? Is it just me?
I think it took me a while, because I could borderline on that cockiness a little bit. And a lot of athletes ask me that, because it's almost, they're afraid to give themselves permission to be confident, because they're afraid they're going to be cocky, and they don't want to be cocky. But to me, the fine line, that line in the sand, is a cocky person thinks they know it all, and they think they've arrived. They don't want to hear from anyone else. They don't want to learn. They don't want to grow. Where a truly confident person that isn't cocky, they know they're good, but they're still on this mission to always better themselves. They have that hunger and that growth mindset. And I really think that's the biggest line. Some people say, well, if you're confident, not cocky, well, you don't talk. And I don't know if it's that bad to talk and admit that you are good. Sure. I think, again, there's a fine line of saying that and bragging. But if someone asks, hey, are you a good long distance runner? I'm going to say, yes, I am. I don't think that's bragging. Now, can I better my times, and can I get better? And do I try to research that and learn it? Yeah, I do. I know, the next lady down the street probably could run circles around me. But I know I'm secure in my abilities. And I think that's the biggest difference, where if I'm cocky, then I don't want to hear from you. I don't want to be on this podcast to learn from you. I think that's the line in the sand, as you call it.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And I would probably add, if you're good and you're confident, other people will say it for you that you're good. If you're arrogant and you're good, you have to tell others. So to me, there's a big difference there. And the arrogant person, I think, is probably less about the team than the confident person. The arrogant person's more of a look at me, I did all this, instead of we. It's the I and we thing. And I thought about that a lot this morning, you can tell. But I have thought about that question, because raising athletes, I've got 3 boys and a daughter, and they're all competitive athletes, and some have gone past that and they're not in sports anymore. But even in professional lives, I've always told them, look, you can have swag. You can be confident without making it so obnoxious and so all about you. And that's where I tried to line. And maybe I gave a poor explanation of that with them growing up, but I did make sure they knew there was a difference. And, I think we have, as a society, we use the word swag, and that's a good thing, but I don't know if it always is, depending on the person. So anyway, I just want to get your take on confidence and arrogance, and wondered if that came up a lot with the people you work with.
It really does. And I'm going to add one thing to it that just came to my mind as you were speaking. I think that cocky person, it is about him, like you said, but the confident person makes others around them better. It's almost like it's a contagious mentality.
Yeah.
So I would add that to that.
That's perfect. Yeah. That's exactly what I was trying to say and couldn't articulate. But yeah, you
helped me come up with it. That's the first time I've said it. So
you read my mail. Well, let's dive in then to some of your the newest book, Challenger Deep. I gotta say, did you come up with that on your own? That whole
No, I did not.
That whole thing like that. That is so outside the box. Like I couldn't even see the box when I was thinking about how you came up with that, and I'm like, that is good. That is deep, so to speak.
This is good, but I cannot take credit for it. I've had a young lady that I've been trying to mentor, and she did a lot of work on the book with me. And I had a boring name like Stories to Overcome Adversity, something like that. And she's like, can I play with the title? I said, sure. I'm not married to anything I've told you about. And she came back with Challenger Deep. I said, okay, well, what does that mean? Yeah, I was clueless. And she said, Challenger Deep is the lowest point in the ocean. Therefore, it's the lowest point on Earth. And these stories are about helping people overcome their low points. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is brilliant. So I have to give Lindsay Hall all the credit there.
That is brilliant and great on her, that research. I don't even know how she even began to Google that. Like, I mean, that's impressive. I'll bet there's not another Challenger Deep book out there, is there?
There actually is.
What?
I think it's a fiction
or science. Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, kind of I briefly saw the introduction after we had the name because I thought, oh, and then I realized there's two totally different genres, two totally different messages. And so I felt, okay, well, we can go with this.
Yeah. Well, so, okay. This wasn't planned. So I'm going to ask you and we'll cut it out and the audience will never know this happened. But okay. So what's been your Challenger Deep moment in life?
I think, I've had a handful. I think we all do. But I would say there was one particular professionally and then one personally. Professionally, I was men and women's tennis coach at USC Upstate. We had a very, very successful program, doing well. Our kids stayed out of trouble, top academic teams. And due to budget cuts and several other things, I was brought in the middle of the season and told that I either had to resign or fire my assistant coach. My assistant coach was like my son. He had played for me, was my assistant. He was from another country. And I saw part of my role as mentoring him to let him eventually take over.
Wow.
And I just thought that was so unfair. We were doing everything right. And now you were going to disband us. And I wasn't going to let him get fired. So I just kind of stormed out of the office and really had a pity party for a little bit. Thought about, well, I'm just quitting then. And I thought, no, that's not showing. I didn't come up with it on my own. Luckily, I have some great people in my life that can talk reason into my head when I need to. And had some friends say, you need to go out with a bang and show your players how you handle this. So luckily that had been over spring break. I was able to gain my control of my emotions, came back, we ended up kicking butt, winning the conference, and that the team had kind of dedicated it to me, but I wanted them to know you're going to be thrown, some curveballs, and you have to respond and make the most of it. I was still a little disgruntled, obviously, with the whole administration, but after stepping away, after a few months, I realized it was my "this is good" moment. Probably for the past 3 or 4 years leading up to that, I have been saying, what else could I do? I think most people who've been in coaching, you're always looking for that exit job, that how do you get out of coaching eventually? Yeah. And so, it was my "this is good." And I don't know if I would have gotten out if I hadn't been forced out. And that led me to the career I do now. And I tell everybody in the world, I think I have the best job in America. I mean, it doesn't feel like work. And I get to talk. breathe, watch, think about sports, and giving life skills that will help them further in life, and using sports as that vehicle. So it was a blessing after I got over myself.
And that's, I mean, you took one for the team on that one, just, literally and figuratively, but so how many years ago was that happened?
You would think I would know that date in my head, but I've tried to bury it.
A few
I guess it
years.
was
So,
about
okay.
12 years ago, probably.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
A lot of years. Okay. So
Yeah.
I wish I could be like a fly on the wall. And I don't know if you've heard from these athletes past, that have graduated and moved on with their lives, what impact like that selfless decision and some of that servant leadership that this podcast is all about impacted their lives, and how they have taken from that and what they built that upon that lesson that you showed them. Like, we're going out fighting. This is what's happening. It's not good, but here's what we're going to do. I'm bowing out, but you guys, go on and do what you do. So I would be curious if you'd ever heard from any of them as to what impact that made on them.
I've never asked them that, but I do keep in touch with most of them, or hear from them when something significant happens in their life. So to me, that shows me that regardless if it was that or not, I played a little impact if they still care to have me in their lives. So
that says it all.
All I need.
Yeah. Okay. So now let's get to personal Challenger Deep moment.
Personal was in 19. So I guess we're going on the 3rd year anniversary of that. Is my math correct? And I had a young cousin that was like a brother to me. He lived at our house most of the time. His mother had several medical issues, and my mom was almost like his second mom. He called her Mama Linda, and very close. He thought I walked on water. If Tami can't do it, no one can do it. Was my biggest fan, always at all my games. And I got a phone call in June of 19 that he was found dead, just tragically dead, no rhyme or reason. And it really, really threw me for a loop and caused a lot of emotional issues with my family. Since then, I still struggle with it occasionally, but I was a godlike on earth to him. That sounds bad, I guess, when I said that out loud, but it's like he's watching me. And sometimes when I question if I should do this or do that, I'm like, what would make Chad Boyd proud? And so he has become this guiding light angel. And I just want to make him proud and, help others that have physical, mental, emotional issues, and that there is a better light during your Challenger Deep. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, and so did you, as you were writing this, I bet some of those came up. There were some triggers as you were writing this book in relation to him and losing him, and just some of maybe the things that he inspired you to do, because it sounds like you were an inspiration to him, but I bet it was vice versa as well. So did any of that impact that writing of that book some?
Probably not this one as much as The Confident Athlete. I was really struggling with writing, which was another Challenger Deep moment for myself, but I made really good grades in school except for writing. And everything I wrote, teachers would hand back, this needs work, this needs editing. Even got a report card back, or a book report back, that had a big F in red, and it said, too good to be yours. So that just fed the narrative that I can't write. And I held on to that forever. And coaches I was working with, they were like, hey, you need something, you need a blog, you need a book. We need some of your material when we're not here, when we're not talking to you. Nope, I don't write. And I stayed in that little, comfort zone and it was just easy to say I don't write and then not grow and develop that way. And so earlier that year, I had been working on it with a colleague, and he ended up getting another job. Well, I was taking the easy way out. He was going to write the book. I was going to give him material. And that was going to be my writing. But he ended up getting a job, which didn't allow him to have time to finish it. So again, I threw a little pity party. Poor me. I guess I'm not going to be a writer. And, had another friend challenge me, and, I I wouldn't hire you to be my mental game coach then if that's your attitude. And I was like, okay, fair enough. And started writing it and was really struggling with the writing process. And then all of that happened with Chad. And that was kind of my final motivation of, you're getting this done. And I dedicated the book to him. The confidence piece obviously didn't tie into the adversity that he had faced or that my family had had to face. But he gave me that final strength to write that book, then which led to confidence of, hey, I can write more books.
Wow. And so I'm going to speak for you, but not really. So you and I have, I think, a similar chip or disk inside our computer in our brain that would really fight the urge to send the teacher that gave you the F on the paper a bunch of your books in the mail. So let's collect all four of them and let's find that person.
I actually thought about having a second dedication and dedicating it to her, but no, I thought I would take the high road.
See, I knew I wasn't out too much on a limb by assuming you were thinking that at least.
It was back there. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, good. So this is the Challenger Deep book. So how long has it been out? It's out and ready to purchase?
Almost a month. It came out December 15th.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you think? Because you obviously have an audience in mind when you're writing a book. Or maybe even a type of person, like laser focused. I'm not as good as that, but maybe you do. What impact do you think that book made on that person or that audience that you were writing it for? Like, what is going to be the huge life-changing moment that somebody that reads that?
I think it's that person, any person. And that was my target audience. Obviously, with my other books, they've been geared more to athletes. And there's adversity every day, but I saw so much more during COVID and just the mental struggles that people were having. And then I've always believed in storytelling. So it's just a collection of stories, but sitting in church, I needed a good story from the minister to pay attention. If he just lectured, I probably was falling asleep, but a good story, I remembered it. My grandfather always taught me lessons through stories. So I thought, how can I use these stories to help someone that is at rock bottom? And it's 30 stories. So they all touch maybe a different area of adversity or a different way of perceiving it or a different way of coming out of it. And I thought, this isn't a book you just sit down and read straight through. It's like, oh, I'm having, a rough day, or I know someone that's having a rough day. So maybe instead of giving them advice, I can share the story with them and help them recognize. Then we add a summary and give some ways of how you move forward, how you apply the story in your life. And so that's what I really want to do. Let's make a bad moment instead of letting it turn into a day or to a week or a month. And again, I know the power of stories in my life. So I'm hoping that just that story could give someone something to hang on to be able to shift their mindset.
Yeah.
So the audience is anyone.
Yeah. So we can all relate to another, we relate to what we relate to. So if we hear a story that's similar, obviously it resonates and we kind of dig in and maybe take something from it that helps us. And that's awesome, because I would imagine there's probably wide range of different, out of those 30 stories, I would imagine there's something that some size will fit somebody. And so that sounds interesting. I'm going to have to get a copy. So before we tell people where to go and get it and how to find you and maybe access some of your coaching resources, do you, this is Servant Leader Podcast, right? Servant Leadership Podcast. You're a person of faith. What role do you weave that in to any of your coaching, or in like now, or to any of your coaching during the teams that you coached? Did you ever weave it in, or did you just kind of live it and people just sort of got it by watching you?
I definitely weave it in when it's allowed to. I have to be careful with public schools,
Sure.
But as soon as an individual opens the door for me, then that becomes a major piece that we talk about. I'm also part of 3 other ladies we have a retreat that we do for women called Confidence to Godfidence. So using that aspect professionally to pour into my faith even more. This Is Good has a little piece of my faith in it. Just Belmont is a Christian school, so that was easier to do. But definitely it's my principles. And I think the first few years of my job, John, I really struggled with, it was about me, and not in an ego sense, but I needed to do this. I have to do this. And, you know, the let go, let God saying really became one of my mottos. And I stopped stressing about where my next job, I stopped stressing if I was going to have the right words. And it's something I say before I get on a podcast. It's something I say before I talk to an individual. And I just feel like if I let God take over, then the right words are going to be said, or the right message. So it has played a huge part in my life once I've opened the door, you know, for God to come in and have more control. You know, as an athlete, we always, and I think even non-athletes like to think they have more control than they do. Then usually, you know, God sends a reminder that you don't. So that's been a struggle in my life, but I know I'm happier and I'm able to serve people better when I do remember that and do live that.
Yeah. Wow, that's good. That's an inspiration. That's cool that you have that retreat for the ladies.
Yeah.
And I like that you weave that in. And now that you're doing kind of the thing that you're doing, you can weave it in as you see fit, pretty much. So I love it. Thank you for coming on today. I've enjoyed this. We literally, for the audience, we literally just we're just throwing this out and having a conversation. Like there was no plan, no real just that she wrote a book. I can't imagine, because in your intro, I saw that you ran like a 40-mile race or something. I was like, we're not going to talk about that because I can't relate to that. We're going to just tip our hat to you and say, well done and good for you. And maybe throw in a bless your heart as we go. But no, I can't relate.
Some people might say that was craziness. So, you know, it's all perspective.
No, it was, dude, there's a story in there, maybe even a book. So,
oh yeah.
You know, so tell us where we can find, obviously Amazon for your resources, but maybe your website and maybe some places to go and pursue, or maybe just kind of dip our toe in the water for some of your coaching services.
Yeah. The website is r2lc.com. That's refuse to lose coaching.com, but you can do the initials R2LC. All the books are on Amazon, but I do like to do group rates if any team does want a book. So just reach out to me at Tami at r2lc.com on the website, or if you reach out to me, I do a free confidence calendar at the beginning of every month that just gives one tip a day of how you can start to implement or apply confidence. You have a blog page, still not quite up to par on writing the blogs, but trying to get there and improve on that as well.
Yeah.
And then I have some pretty active sites on Facebook. This Is Good, just trying to create that This Is Good mindset, Parents in the Mental Game, and then the Confident Athlete Facebook groups.
Yeah. Really good. Really good. Are you doing that? So can you go out in person and coach, or what if you're doing something that somebody's in Texas and aren't you in North Carolina? Are you in North Carolina?
Okay. South Carolina.
South Carolina. So yeah. Are you doing a lot of virtual coaching for teams in that regard, or?
I do probably about 75 virtual, 25 in person, which was a big shift before COVID. Before COVID, I did mostly in person and kind of dragged my feet on it, but realized it opened the doors and allowed me to access a lot more people. So it has become predominantly more virtual. Okay.
Well, good to know. And again, from the audience, thank you so much. It's been great to hear your story, even more in depth, and get to hear perspective on where these ideas came from and who you're working with now, what you're doing. It's really awesome and to see that you're impacting other people and you're making it about something bigger than you. So audience, with that, she's been Tami Matheny. We've been Last in Line. Be blessed.